It's not so much a question. I just think on page 1, line 16, the question that Representative Pricewood had, I think defendant was I would bet the defendant was crossed out in order to eliminate confusion between a criminal defendant and a civil defendant, and this section applies only to civil defendants, as in plaintiff and defendant. And typically, right, the application for a protective order is made by a plaintiff. It goes against a civil defendant, and so in order to clear up confusion, a person restrained under this section makes it clear that that section applies to a civil defendant, and there's no confusion with the other kind of defendant. So, Representative Bellow-Wilkinson's question and your question and counsel's answers are all floating around this idea of constructive possession, which is a complex and amorphous thing. The law, as I read it, bans possession of the firearm, which in our law is defined as someone who has custody and control over an object. So to take it out of as an example, to take it out of the firearms world, oftentimes we deal with constructive possession when you got 4 teenagers in the car's pulled over, everyone bails and runs, and then except the driver, and then there's a firearm in the back seat. Now the driver may not have known that someone in the back seat was carrying the firearm, but they tucked it in and then they jet. So the counsel for the driver is going to be left trying to fight the constructive possession argument that the prosecution will undoubtedly make in that case. The same thing goes here, is that if you are a person who is banned under this law from possessing a firearm, and you live in a home with other people who own firearms, and let's make a distinction between own and possess, they're 2 different things, and one doesn't have anything to do with the other, then the person who is banned runs a risk by living in the home, but is not necessarily precluded, because if nobody can establish that they have constructive possession, well then they don't have constructive possession. And the perfect example is this. In your example of the teenager who got out of line, if she's living in the home with the dad, and the dad's got a gun locker with a significant collection, as long as the gun locker is locked up and dad has the key, and always has the key, right, and generally retains control of the key, then nobody's going to be able to make that case beyond a reasonable doubt that the girl had possession of those firearms, and I think she'd be safe. But it's a risk. It's not a slam dunk.